Hello again, my friend. It's Todd Cetnar, your mental performance coach, and welcome back to the Three Pillars of Elite Results podcast here on Wisdom Wednesday. And as they say in the teams, the only easy day was yesterday. Today, I welcome in a very special guest and friend, former Navy SEAL sniper, Sean Haggerty. Sean was an American veteran who served as a Navy SEAL for nearly a decade. And one night during his third deployment to Iraq, he just wanted a cold beer. With no beer available, he decided to make it. He crafted up his first batch, and from there, a new passion was born. He fell in love with the artistry that goes into brewing and took every opportunity to perfect the process as he finished his time in the teams. In today's episode, Sean takes us on his journey as to why he became a Navy SEAL in the first place. He tells incredible stories about his time serving our country. And he shares with us his experience as an instructor on the popular show on the Discovery Channel called The Selection. And finally, Sean will fill us in on how his current venture as the CEO of Protector Brewery in San Diego is going. Let's go. Today, I have not only a special guest, but I have a special friend. He's been a mentor, and this gentleman wears a lot of hats. He is a former Navy SEAL, an instructor. He got his MBA. He's a CEO and business owner, and most importantly, probably to him, he's a husband and a father. So I'd like to welcome Sean Haggerty to the show. Sean, thanks for being here, man. Pleasure to have you.
Todd, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been a long time since you and I actually got together face to face. The last time I think was in San Diego when I came to visit you, but I think we should open up with how we met. And a story for my listeners. I was with a medical device company, and Sean came in as a guest speaker, and we were in Las Vegas at the time, if you recall, Sean.
Yep.
And I don't know how we got talking, but we got talking about your first free fall as a Navy SEAL, which didn't go according to plan, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And here we are just outside the Stratosphere Tower, which I think is one of the tallest free fall buildings in the United States. And you had challenged me because I think I mentioned to you that day, I was a little bit scared of heights. And you said, here's what I'll do. I'll stay an extra night. I think your flight was out that evening. You said, if you come with me, we got a group of people from the company, and we jump off the Stratosphere building. I think it's 112 stories. And man, I never forget this. I think you went first. A couple other people went, and I was the last one to go. And as I'm standing up there thinking to myself, you're standing on a glass platform, looking down at all of Las Vegas. And I'm saying to myself, man, this is the last thing I want to do. But if I have to get escorted through the elevator out the front door and have his Navy SEAL look at me saying, you didn't do it, I said, I can't do it, man. I got to jump. And that was the first time I've ever done it, man. Overcame a fear. So I appreciate you helping me through that. And our relationship started that night.
Yeah. We share a common fear. I'm still afraid of heights. SEAL is an acronym for sea, air, and land. I don't put the A in SEAL at all. I'm terrified of heights. But that's also one of the resilience things mentally in SEAL training. It's part of the job description, so you better get over it. But it also translates into other things that, you're hesitant to push forward on. People are naturally risk adverse. And it's also, when you go up to the stratosphere, it couldn't be, it's safer than driving on the freeway,
100%.
It's just really getting over yourself and doing it. And, kudos to you and the rest of the team for saying, yeah, let's do this. That makes all the difference though, when you can push through that,
Well, that was a big night for me, and my wife was sleeping because of the time change, but the next day she couldn't believe that I did it. So that was huge. But listen, man, that started the friendship and the relationship. I think that was over 4 or 5 years ago now. But where I'd like to begin with our listeners is, we're going to get into the SEAL teams and what you've got going on now in San Diego, but I'd love to take a step back and let's just tell everyone who you are, where you grew up, family atmosphere, and a little bit about how you got to the decision to become a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. I would say that the story that I grew up, some people would say, oh, that's unfortunate, but I think that life happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. And so, I grew up in a small town in Yorkville, Illinois, about 60 miles west of Chicago. And the practices and habits of people around me, close family members, they were Breaking Bad. and then by the time middle school rolled around, parents are getting a divorce, brother and sister are rolling with some of the wrong crowds. And by the time I was in high school, my dad got arrested for drug trafficking, and my brother was in prison and my dad was in prison. And I thought to myself, man, the pickings are slim in terms of opportunity around here. So, but I always wanted to be a SEAL ever since I was 8 years old. And I thought, what is it about SEAL training that is, one, the hardest training in the world, and two, why do people do it, and what do you get out of it? And so then I joined the Navy right after high school, graduated high school, joined the Navy, went in at 18, and then went over to SEAL training. And then, I got a very a rude awakening in terms of what you see in the movies and then what you see in reality. I showed up to SEAL training in 2005, went through Navy boot camp and that process in 2004. And we started SEAL training with about 135 candidates, ended Hell Week 4 weeks later with 20, graduated 12 6 months later. So that attrition is atrocious.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you go through BUDS, obviously you go through Hell Week, which you mentioned, and a lot of people know this. It's one of the most torturous trainings on the planet. And now you're a Navy SEAL, right? So talk to me about, at that point, what was it about being a SEAL? I think you're part of SEAL Team 3 and 5, former sniper, breacher, master training specialist, you're a free fall parachutist, like all these titles and things in the SEAL team. Talk to me about the actual experience of being part of Operation Iraqi Freedom and your 11 years in the military.
Yeah. The nuts and bolts of it is, when you go into the military, it's a fast-paced organization, right? And I think that there's so many leadership lessons that are both good and both learning from. But say in Hell Week, and this is a very good parallel in everyday life, but when you look around, everybody, all 135 candidates, they say the same thing: never quit. And then you look at the surface of them, and you never judge a book by its cover. Some of the individuals that were there that I thought, that person would never quit, first to quit. That person physically will never break. Oh, that was the first person to break. Yeah. And then it's the guys that they look like, scrappy and, didn't really win too much in life. They lost more often than they won. Those were the individuals that would make it through that. And it's really because it's all mental, or 90% mental, 10% physical. Now, it's physically the hardest training in the world because of Hell Week. It's about 126 hours straight, Sunday through Friday. You get 2-2-hour naps. And that's the portion of SEAL training that makes it the hardest physically demanding training in the world. But again, it's all mental. I mean, the parallel here is, if you can just stay in the moment, stick with whatever you're doing, don't let yourself just get, overwhelmed with any scenario. You'd be very surprised what you can do in life. And so getting through SEAL training, finished, very lucky. And I say very lucky because we rank each other. And in terms of physical performance, ability, you're always going to have a top 5% and a bottom 5%. But it's just like being a doctor, right? What do you call somebody at the bottom 5% after they get done with medical school? Doctor, right? So it's the same parallel in SEAL training, but that makes all the difference, I think, when you learn more when you fail, or you learn more when your peers are doing better than you. And if you're open to that experience, your career starts to go and your life starts to go in a very good direction. So done with SEAL training, 2006, went to SEAL Team 3, find myself in Fallujah, Iraq in 2006 at 20 years old with SEAL Team 3. And in the SEAL teams, if you haven't done a couple of years in the SEAL teams, you're kind of considered a new guy. And even though it takes about 2 years to get there, right, they still count you as you don't know anything. Yeah. And then you get there, and then you start to see, okay, I'm gone from basic SEAL training into being on an deployment in a war zone. And the same parallel holds true. I mean, we're driving, there's improvised explosives devices all over the place. We're doing some direct action raids. We're interacting with partner forces in Iraq, other national forces, right? So there's a lot of opportunities to, let your emotions get the best of you. And, but again, if you stay with it and just be open to learning, those scenarios that get really tough, it'll make all the difference. And so I get back from my first deployment in 2006, come back, and it was about 3 months. I was a new guy, didn't have too much combat experience at that time. But then in 2008, that's when went over there with SEAL Team 3, and Chris Kyle, an American sniper, he talks about it in his book a little bit, but he did about 4 deployments to Iraq, and then I was with his troop on his last deployment, my second deployment, and that was really where the most fear kind of came to the front line. I mean, in the first deployment, had opportunities to push through very fearful moments, moments of adversity, 120-degree heat, getting blown up by an IED, or there may be some contact here. But in 2008, it was really intense. There was an army of about 10,000 militia right outside Baghdad in Sadr City, and they just switched their stance from being allies to being enemy. And then they were causing a lot of chaos, killing a lot of Americans, a lot of coalition forces. And so that was the most combat experience that I've ever had in my career. So on that deployment, being a sniper and then also being a heavy machine gunner, Mark 48. So I had rocket launcher on my back, machine gun, sniper rifle. And what we would do is, we had to apply these, innovative tactics to defeat this particular enemy, because they've been sitting there waiting, biding their time, observing, and they're going to do anything to win. That's another parallel in business and in life as well. But staying with it, being surrounded by the enemy, literally buildings crumbling around us as we're retreating, cause a little bit of chaos with the enemy, retreat, cause a little bit more in another area, retreat. And I'm happy to say that within a few months, that army, they eventually surrendered. But it wasn't just because of the 30 SEALs that I was a part of and, the effect that we had on the enemy and their tactics. But, it was the infrastructure that we had with us, the 10th Mountain Division. We had Apaches overhead, we had tanks, we had all these other, assets at our disposal. And the objective was, how do we win the population? Right? Because that's all war is, that's all business really is. Right. And how do we do it in the best manner that we can possibly do it in, representing ourselves as, an elite American or elite fighting force,
It's obviously interesting stuff. And we, of course, thank you for your service. And you just used a word that is basically etched in stone in what I do, right? The 3 pillars of elite results. And that's exactly what you guys are, right? As your elite individuals doing some unbelievable training and putting your life at jeopardy for our country. And so let's talk about mindset for a minute. A lot of civilians will throw out the Navy SEAL saying, the only easy day is yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to get out of our own way in civilian world when we're not having a great day and we're trying to push through certain things in our career and in our personal life. But coming from a true Navy SEAL in yourself, what does that meaning actually mean to you guys in teams?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. So I was in the team for 11 years and we repeated it, we lived it. And I do think there's another saying that ties and, kind of explains it. It's earn your trident every day. And so when you become a SEAL, you get this insignia on your chest and it shows you that you're an official, SEAL in the U.S. Navy. But it's about not resting on your laurels, not being afraid to not be tied to, the credentials or the notoriety of having a title. It's really like, okay, if I have to do whatever it takes today to win, regardless of what the actions were yesterday, then I'm going to do that. And it's also, if you accept that every day is going to be more challenging than the last, regardless of what your plan is, that also kind of prepares your mind in the right way so you don't get frustrated because you don't have expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most people, I don't know if you've heard Mike Tyson ever say his famous quote is everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah. Right. And one of the things that I often talk about with my clients is it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you guys are really great at that, because no matter what, what is in front of you or what the plan of attack is, we all know about the Osama bin Laden raid. None of that went according to plan, but that's what you plan for and prepare for. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if for my listeners, if you can translate, when you said everything's blowing up around you and you're in the moment and you're fearful, and now you're a business owner, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But when you're faced with adversity and you don't want to do something, or you're worried about doing something, or fear creeps in, what is the mindset? What is the strategy that you go to, that you learned to say, okay, this is how I need to get out of it in the moment, so you don't keep spiraling out of control and people sometimes can't come back from it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in SEAL training, you get so many moments to train this, right? It takes a lot of training, and the training has to start now, in the moment. And so in SEAL training, you get to a stage where, okay, this evolution was pretty easy because I'm comfortable in the water. And then this next evolution of going through jump school, terrified of heights. Okay, this is going to be a little bit more mentally challenging, but they stack them up, hundreds, if not thousands of these, they call them high risk evolutions. That's just it's a nice term. But yeah, your life is literally on the line if things don't go according to plan. And so the reason I bring that up is that's in our training. Your life plays out how you prepare for it, how you train for it. When you step onto the field, or you step out and step into the office, make that pitch, or step in front of your kids. If you can step there, right, the preparation work, has to come, before you step out there. That can happen daily, before you wake up, or even midday. But the most important thing, I think, is just trying to manage your runaway fears. Okay. 99% of what you think is going on up here, right, it's never going to play out in real life. Yeah. Right. And the way that you grew up, the social programming you have, that subconscious programming, right, that subculture, whether it was Illinois or a pocket of Alabama or Canada or Iraq, wherever it was, right, you're going to have a certain mindset going into something, and it's really up to you to think differently. And the way to think differently is, you can have that mindset of like, I can do this, right? No matter what, I can do this. So you have to win that moment first. And so, because natural human tendency is to get angry when you get adversity. Then it's also the blame game. And then it's also kind of shameful. Like, I shouldn't be in this. Oh, I should have done more. I should have done that. You should think about that stuff, not in that moment. Put that in the back burner, and then just say, okay, I'm here right now, regardless of how it is, right? And my actions right now will make all the difference in the world, right? That goes into whether you're studying for a test in school, or you're surrounded by the enemy, and your interpreter just said, we're surrounded by the enemy, our allies just left the building, and we're all going to die. And like, I looked at it, I remember the moment as clear as day. I was like, maybe we don't want to start the battle like that, maybe right. Just, head on over there. And, but it's, I make light of it because we did get surrounded. We did get attacked, the RPGs, the mortars, everything was coming in. But again, those are things that you can respond to, right? Yeah. You can't plan everything, because you can plan how you're going to respond, right? Because, there's so many variables in the world, and you just don't know. And so that's what SEALs really train for. That is a very good parallel, whether you jump into parenting or entrepreneurship or anything. It's, be more, instead of trying to plan everything, right? Just be open to learning about everything and try to use everything that you can possibly do in that moment. And if you don't win it, you have to take what that loss is as, something that you have to integrate into your life, because it's not going to get better unless you do better. That's just period. And you have to look at yourself like, black and white in the mirror. Did I do this right? Did I not do it right? And most people want to be very prideful and egoic, right, and hide that. But it's extremely powerful to just say, I messed that up. That's on me, regardless of if I'm at the bottom or the top of the totem pole. You're going to get a lot more connection and team camaraderie from that. And you're also going to learn a lot more, because as soon as you shut that door, the learning stops.
No, 100%. You remind me of a book by Conor McGregor's coach, John Kavanaugh, called Win or Learn. And it's not about, we're going to lose in life, but that's where the lessons come. And, a lot of people, where I see a lot of people kind of fail, is something will go wrong. And you said it at the top of the podcast, is things are going to go wrong, but it's a matter of how you come out of that, right? And what you do with that. And so, if you go through your day, and to your point, things happen for me and not to me. If you can have that mentality, then no matter what goes wrong, now it's a chance for you to handle it and create that opportunity versus saying, woe is me and this happened to me. So all great lessons, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And honestly, it's, there's things that you think are going to happen the next day. And as human beings are lazy. So am I. Everybody wants the path of least resistance. I mean, you can see it in the animal kingdom. I mean, they'll take a path and, there's traps that are laid for you and those easy paths. But in all reality, I mean, you hope that the next day is going to be easier than today. It just, in reality, give up that expectation and you will mentally be free.
Agreed. So let's bridge the gap between the SEAL teams and where you are now as a CEO and founder of Protector Brewery. It's the only organic brewery, or it's the first, I think. I don't know if it's the only now, but first. Is it first and only?
Still, yep.
Awesome. First and only organic brewery in Southern California. We're going to get there. But before that, so you left the SEAL teams, honorably discharged 2000, remind me?
Yeah, 2015.
15. And I know you went on one of my favorite shows of all time in 2016 and 17 called The Selection. And for those of you that don't know what it is, it was a special operations experiment for about 2 years. I think you had 2 seasons on the History Channel where you brought in civilians and put them through a simulated BUD/S, which was really cool to see people try to thrive through that and all walks of life in that reality show as well. But you were an instructor there. So how did you get linked up with that? Because that was a really cool show.
Yeah, good question. I think that there was a SEAL network in LA. There was a few movies that came out, Active Valor, a few others, and there was a few SEALs in my network that were on that show. And then they started to get linked in with some high profile producers, Peter Berg. There's a few others the top of my head I can't think about, but they've all made, Michael Bay. There's been so many of them that, they're like, you're SEALs. Okay, how can we start to translate some of these messages from what you guys went through into, a reality show? And when I went up there, I was really to do a favor for a friend. And then it turned out when I talked to them, they said, okay, you have all these credentials and, what do you think about doing the show? I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always open to learning and, just trying to, the message in the show that we were trying to translate was just things that are, good that you can learn from. The show every episode has some kind of definitive principle behind it. And I'd highly encourage anybody to watch it. It's free. You can YouTube it. But, these lessons really do translate into everyday life, and just getting linked up with that. Great, good experience. But at the same time, I was doing that, getting out of the military, starting this company, also doing an MBA, and then trying to do that show the right way. There were some hard decisions I had to make because I was getting stretched pretty thin. And then eventually I started to, that's going to be great. There's other opportunities up in LA. But my real passion is beer, and I want to do this entrepreneurial experience. And then also the reason why I got out of the SEAL teams was to have a family. Because I was divorced once before in the SEAL teams because you're gone so much, and it's kudos to everybody that can make it in a strong relationship. And there were mistakes that I made in that relationship that I'll take full ownership of. It wasn't her fault. There were things that both of us did that we learned from. But, around that same time, my dad died, my mom died, my sister died, my grandpa died, and I got a divorce all within 9 months. And when you talk about adversity, right, you can get hit with that and you can jump into a victim mentality and break bad and, just let one bad thing happen after another. And when I say that's what it is. You're letting these things happen to you and your life. Or you can take responsibility and learn, be the best version of yourself, be the best version of what my parents wanted me to be, right? Maybe they didn't have the opportunities that I had. Right. And so I took that all on board and said, okay, I'm going to change my life, get better, get a lot better. And then, everything after that started to line up, because life never changes unless you change. Your surroundings don't change unless you actually, pick it up, move it around, and do something with it. But that also started, that's how I attracted the love of my life, Corey. We, fell in love, and I thought, okay, I want to be a good family man, and I have to transition from the SEAL teams. 11 years in, if you do 20, you retire. And so I made chief, and career-wise, it was not a good move at all. So you go from a position here, right? And then you say, okay, I'm going to get out of the Navy, go back to level 0 in entrepreneurship, and work for nothing, And so the principles from the SEAL teams, really, they just carried over. It was, okay, what's the problem today, and how can I make it better tomorrow? And it's like building a house. You can just do it brick by brick, and just know that things take time, and it's a process, right?
Yeah. Well, as our mutual friend Brian Kane would say, it's a 200-foot mentality, right? 200 feet at a time, and that's the way you got to look at it, getting 1% better. And you did something. Talk about going back to 0. I think in 2015-16, you went through the Ratty School of Management at UC San Diego to help propel you into becoming a businessman, and a successful one, in which you are. And is the story true as we start to talk about Protector Brewery? By the way, as people watch this, behind you, we're going to talk about your logo there and how you came to that, which is really cool. And obviously you're in the brewery at the moment doing the podcast. But what I heard was a story you were, it was a night of your 3rd deployment, and you just wanted a cold beer. And that was the start of Protector Brewery. So tell me about that. Is that a true story?
It's an absolutely true story. And I think that surprisingly, people would think that SEALs, ignore all feelings, and then, ignore all emotions, but your gut instincts and your curiosity really I think they kind of guide you on the right path, right? If that hair in the back of your neck stands up, it's to tell you something, right? Or if you're like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm still going to do it, and I can rationalize it. But the intuition kind of popped, and it was really from a need that needed to be serviced. So 3rd deployment to Iraq, not as intense as the 2nd one. And I thought, man, 3 months into a 6-month deployment, just need a beer. And then made the first one over there. And, there were guys there that were like Dan Crenshaw, Congressman Crenshaw. Yeah. He was the first guy to taste that first brew, and he kind of did one of these.
Oh, the cringe.
Yeah, it's like, and I think that parallel is good, taking that feedback, taking that honest feedback in life, and saying, you got to start somewhere, right? To do anything that you want to do in life, you've got to start somewhere, and you have to accept that you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I never started a business. My undergrad was an online degree with Ashford, right? But it was regionally accredited the same as UCSD, one of the top 15 universities in the world.
Right.
And then UC Rady, right? It was an evening program, a weekend program for this MBA program, full MBA program. But that school centers on entrepreneurship. And I didn't want to set myself up for failure when I was going from being a SEAL, brewing that first batch of beer in Iraq and saying, I think there's something to this. And I think we can do it better by making it USDA certified organic, giving back to veteran organizations. And, the timeline and the events that it was just adversity, right? Trying to get a trademark, had to, file a lawsuit with Miller Coors to try to fight to get a trademarked, a logo and everything.
Right.
So you could probably hear somebody's trying to deliver something, but it's going to have to wait till after this podcast.
No worries.
I'll leave it at the door. But, trying to just be okay with losing, right? Because, you're a SEAL, you're at the top of your game, right? And then you consciously choose to put yourself out there when you get out and say, here's a product. And it was mediocre at the beginning, right? But we've worked so hard to just take on that feedback. And it's not rocket science. It's not sexy either, but the only way to get better is to ask people for their real feedback, and only take feedback from people that you truly are asking for, right? People who are in pain, hurt people. So That's just a little nugget that a mentor of mine gave me. So you can't get bogged down by the people that want to keep you down there, but there are people that really want to help you out. Yeah. They also have to give you real feedback on the progress of where you're at and where you're going. Yeah. And that's okay, right? Whether it's a kid or, somebody who's your elder, I think that's really helped us. And so having the name, getting the brewery off the ground, right? In 2017, graduating from business school, saying, okay, at least I didn't even think that I knew even more. I just knew what the things that I didn't know that were going to hurt me if I didn't figure these things out, right? Or partner with the right people to do this. And so when we opened the brewery on June 2nd, it was June 2nd, 2017, our bank account was at zero. And we thought, okay, I hope that people walk in. And it's only been hard decision after hard decision to scale, to get into distribution. The same day that my wife said, this was in 2017 after we opened, the same day that my wife said, hey, I'm pregnant, this is going to be great. One of my key business partners walked out on me and said, hey, I'm going to push this on you. I don't want anything, good luck with it. And so the roller coaster of emotion, I thought I had my lick of it in the SEAL teams to learn from it. And it was just a whole other realm of trying to understand cash flow, trying to understand how a company works and how to scale a product. And, really the foundational principles in the SEAL teams are master the basics, master the basics. And then the same thing in entrepreneurship is master the basics, make your product amazing and make it of true value to the end user, the end consumer. And, since those days of brewing in Iraq, with Johnny Kim also, he's tasted some of the beer before. I know he's gone on to do amazing things. The reason I mention these guys is they're high caliber individuals that truly make big impact in their communities and big impact in the world. And they also set a huge standard and a bar for people to look up to and raise the standard. I don't think that competition is like pushing people down. I think it's being the best version of yourself, pursuing whatever that passion is, and then trying to elevate people, right? And try to coach people, try to help people. But at the end of the day, now we sit with distribution. We just launched into Florida. We're in Colorado, Texas, Washington, Arizona. We just signed an agreement with Oregon. We're launching into New York. We're going to be doing nationwide direct-to-consumer beer sales in November.
Awesome.
But there's also been adversity there too. During COVID, we lost 50% of our retail revenue, and it looked like we're at a nice 45-degree angle growth curve, and then we just took a huge dip. And you ask yourself, is like, okay, am I going to blame the economy? Am I going to blame this, or am I just going to keep mastering the basics, working on the fundamentals? And then, that first year we beat out a major brewery competitor, Stone Brewery, in a major beer competition. Wow. And so since then we've had about 8 to 10 international awards for our products. And now we have about, 600 to 700 retailers across all those multiple states. But in that moment, you think that everything's going to die, right? And it's another parallel, like when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or, your kids are screaming or something, you think that's going to be forever. And it's the same thing in Hell Week. The reason why people quit is because it's Monday and Tuesday, and they're thinking about it's going to be like this my entire CEO career. Right. And it's a moment in time, right? You just have to get over it, right?
Yeah, great way to look at it. Just micro goals, one step at a time. It's like climbing a ladder, one ring at a time. That's awesome advice, man. And as I look behind you, let's talk about how you came up with the logo and Protector Brewery, which I know we've talked about it. Really cool name, but talk about the logo and why you called it Protector.
Yeah. Again, I think that if you're going to do something in this world, you got to be yourself. You have to be who you think you want to be, right? And there's going to be plenty of people that are somebody else that are going to tell you to be somebody else. And I think that contributing to your economy, your community, society, right? You have to wear many hats and you have to do things that you may not want to do, but it's for somebody else. That's a foundational principle of being a SEAL, right? And then in a company, I mean, I'm sure that, people that are watching this podcast, and I'm pretty sure you believe this too, Todd, and your family, you choose products based on, what those companies are doing, right? If you buy baby formula, or, if you buy a bike for, maybe a triathlon or something, right? You look deeper than just the product. You look at what the people in the company are doing and how is that truly benefiting more than just making money. And so we wanted to be an organic brewery. My wife mentioned the idea at the beginning, and I thought, we believe in that because, we've got this huge problem about sustainability. It's really in the forefront of, our species. And so how can we contribute to that, right? And so just doing it certified organic, and then in a business sense, if we can show competitors that you can do this, and win awards and, take market share from them, right? You play them. It's also, this is like tactics within war, right? The general population is a consumer segment. The enemy might just be your competitors. Right. And you're trying to convince the general population that what they're doing is not as good as what you're doing. And people these days, in general, they want more from it. Mm-hmm. But going organic also shields us from competitors mimicking our products, right? And so these are plans that your go-to-market strategy, your concept of operations before you do a high-value target, direct action rate, or when you're planning out your day tomorrow, you're saying, I'm going to do all of these things and I'll adapt to, life that kind of gets in the way. Right. It's and don't let adversity steer you away from what you're planning comfortably. To what you really, what really makes you feel alive, right? Or what is truly you that that this world kind of needs. The name Protector is because we donate to countless charities. I mean, veteran suicide, local police, local fire department, actively involved in our communities into these individuals of service, that they're serving something bigger than themselves. The name Protector is like, okay, like you're a SEAL-owned company that donates to all these great, protecting organizations. And of course, being fully organic, not to go into it in too much detail, but it makes a huge impact on sustainable farming practices, and also the chemicals that are discharged afterwards. They're all EPA certified too. It makes a huge impact. All right. And then when you get the judgment from major competitors or other breweries, right, and they're like, what is, it's just, you don't want to sink to that low level of just judgment. What you want to do is say, hey, listen, let's put both of our beers in the same competition and see which one's better. And guess what? The consumer, the people, we'll let them choose. And also too, if you guys want, I'll tell you exactly how to go organic, because if you guys do it and we do it, guess what? The whole world gets better, man. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, it's a weird concept, man. But we're all here together, so we got to work together. Teamwork makes that dream work, guys.
Absolutely, man. So I always say there's two types of people in the world: lifters and leaners. Right? You either lift people up, make them better off than they were before you engage with them, or you're going to drag people down and be negative and gossip. And nah, man, you're certainly a lifter. And as I look at the logo behind, that's the same one throughout the American Sniper movie, correct?
Similar. Yeah, we'd actually put these logos on our body armor to psychologically, entice the enemy or show them that we're there, right? If we get found out. And I mean, we wanted something that really translates. Beer is kind of an aggressive product, right? Yeah. It's kind of culturally, perceived that way. And we wanted something, to go fully organic, unfiltered, and vegan products as well. We wanted to, send a message that says, hey, this is a powerful product, right? And if you want to make some change, you might want to think about going organic too. And the beer is it's just great, we work very diligently on making a really solid product. But yeah, all the things that have happened with me and not to me, but for me, I've pulled those things, like the things that work, into our company culture, and it's made a massive impact.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So let's transition quickly before I'm going to give you some hot seat questions to end the podcast. We'll do some top of the mind type questions, but it's been a long time since I've seen Corey and little Shawnee. So give them my love. But how is it being a father, a businessman, I also will couple that with one question that I know my wife asked me to ask you on this podcast, which is there are a lot of mothers out there that I not only work with, but also I know listen to the podcast. And, as a mother, and Corey knows this really well, and of course, as a father, this, it's really hard because your time is taken away from you, especially in the early years. And I know we have two daughters now, as you know, Sean, and they've struggled with sleep patterns and getting a good night's sleep. And it's hard on us. We're two individuals that work for a living. As you know, I'm an entrepreneur trying to grind it out myself. I'm also trying to be an Ironman this year. So there's a lot of things going on. But when you get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning after only sleeping for 2 hours like you would in buds, what is the mindset that you took as a father? And again, transferable skills from the teams. Like, what would you tell a mother who's struggling with sleep, struggling getting her time back? How do you navigate through those days where you just don't feel like doing it?
Yeah. Great questions. So to combine all those elements, try to be a good father, try to be a good business owner, try to focus on our employees, right? Try to focus on our suppliers, our retailers, our distributors, right? You get stretched pretty thin, and everybody does, right? Everybody has a job, everybody has a family. The best thing that I do is what I try to do is, it's very basic and simple, is I know what I need to do tomorrow at different stages, right? I know when I wake up what that feeling is going to be, right? And what I try to do is understand that. I know that I'm going to hit a wall at this time. I know that, if my son needs something, then I know that around this time, this usually happens, right? And all you're doing is making a prediction. You're just trying to aim small and miss small, honestly. So you try to map these things out throughout the day, right? And then you try to throw in things there that you're like, okay, here's my 30,000 foot view. I need to structure in 30 minutes to push my entrepreneurial ventures forward, right? I need to, get my mind right, my body right. But everybody, if you really take the time to try to sit down and say, okay, what makes me tick? What am I like? Do I like coffee at this certain time? Just, even if you don't know everything, just try to start by structuring those things into your days, right? And also be gentle with yourself. You don't have to cram in a million things tomorrow. Just try to put these things into time segments. Like, okay, I want to do X, Y, and Z here. And then also just know that there's going to be something that comes up, like a kid who maybe, needs to go to the emergency room or just can't sleep, right? But at that time, you're like, okay, but I'm going to structure my coffee in here. I'm going to structure my walk in here. These mastering the basics, like, human beings need plenty of water. If you wake up hungover, that's going to set the tone for something. How do you get away from that? And also, how do you put boundaries on friends and family,
right?
That, they're going to be asking for your time as well. And how do you communicate that in a loving, caring, affectionate way? And the best way to do it is to harp on, a schedule. And, if you put those things on the schedule well in advance, then, when these things come up that, you'd much rather do, or somebody, like you said, is leaning on you rather than trying to build you up, right? You have these things in place to make that decision. So if you can map those things out as much as you can, that's going to put you mentally in a much better place. Then you just wake up the next day. And as I say in the SEAL teams, plan your dive, when you go basically put a mine on a ship underwater at night for 4 hours, plan the dive and then dive your plan, right? And then what happens underwater, if you see the great white, adjust to it, as best you can, but that's the best thing to start. Try to plan that out. And then the next day, there's all these other little things that really help me. Like, if I can run, get myself centered, breathe, these things help you, stressfully, but also meditation, if you can take 15 minutes to try to get quiet. Because again, what happens in your brain, right, in terms of fear creates all this chaos and static. And it really prevents you from seeing the clear solution when those problems get presented. And so just try to set yourself up for success. Try to be brutally honest with people. Hey, I have this time open. I have this time closed. Or, hey, I would love to go out with you this day, but my son already has a schedule for this. And when people try to convince you to stray away from something that is it's not building you up, it's tearing you down. Take that time, to practice having that compassionate, connecting conversation of saying, listen, like, I have these times available to do that. I'd love to do it then, but I have to stick to this. It also builds resiliency. It builds discipline. And it's practice for controlling your emotions. When the kid's screaming at 2 a.m., just wake up, deal with it, and don't focus on, these subconscious programmings like we have to get 8 hours. That's great in theory. In life, that just doesn't happen. You try to make it happen, right? Or you could structure a babysitter, right, for the week from now and say, hey, we're going to sleep for 8 hours. And I've done that with my wife. Right. We're going to get a babysitter. She'll take care of the kiddo. You and I are just going to sleep and meditate.
It's a great idea.
Those little basic things really help out. And also too, when somebody, if you fail at something, make it better, implement it into your daily practice and say, okay, this reoccurring thing that's causing me a lot of stress, I can automate this and make this something that, I put all these reminders on my calendar to say, take out the trash on Friday, because I don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
I want to think about my son. I want to think about my wife. I want to think about what people are saying about our beer or negotiating new distribution contracts or whatever. So if you can automate all that stuff, it just allows you to live in the moment and master the basics, man.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot you gave us there, but I think in a nutshell, my takeaway to our listeners is, one, when you talk about basics, is just get into a routine of excellence, right? What does that routine look like? Plan tomorrow, today. And what's funny is you also talk about perspective. Anytime I talk to you or a Navy SEAL, Jason Kuhn, a mutual friend of ours, there's perspective of like being in a war zone with everything blowing up around you, literally. And then when you translate that to give me advice on if I don't sleep a couple hours less than I want to, that's perspective, right? That's perspective. I always say, like, I used to get upset if I'm driving to work and spilled coffee on my sport coat, or, like you just said, our kids up crying at night at 2:00 in the morning. But if you just look at perspective, it'll put you back to a centered spot where you're like, okay, I got a great house, a great family, a great life. I've got nothing blowing up around me. I think I'm going to survive these couple hours. And I think perspective is really big. And the third thing you talked about, Sean, you used the word time segments. My listeners know it's the same thing. We talk a lot about time blocking, and it's in full alignment of what you're saying, right? Prepare tomorrow, today, time block your most important tasks, add in the rest of your to-do list, and create boundaries around you. And it gives you the best chance for success, or the best chance to win, for sure. So all great takeaways and nuggets. So as we close the podcast, man, this has been great time. Sorry to go over a few minutes, but when you're having fun with people you enjoy, that's what happens.
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm going to give you some hot seat questions. All right. There's about 8 or 9 of them. All I want you to do is answer them top of mind, 1 or 2 word answers. And if I want to dive into it, we will, as to why the answer was what it was. All right. So here we go. First hot seat question was this: last meal, if you could choose anything you could ever eat on the planet, what would you choose?
Mashed potatoes.
Wow. That's just a nice meat and potato, nothing extravagant kind of guy. All right. Favorite smell?
Beer, IPA.
I love that. Favorite movie of all time?
Ooh, Jason Kuhn would agree. Braveheart.
That's a good one. All right. Favorite beer at your brewery at the moment?
Warfighter, double dry hopped hazy IPA.
Awesome. What is your favorite app on your phone right now?
Google Calendar.
Oh, there you go. Stay organized. What is the background on your phone right now?
It is my baby boy.
Love that, man. Little Shawnee. Do you have a favorite quote? If so, what is it?
Know better, do better.
I like that. What's the one song, no matter when you hear it, when it comes on, man, it gets you so fired up, energy's flowing. What's that song to you?
Oh man, you'll laugh at this one. I think it's Toto, and I don't even know.
Africa?
Love it.
Oh, it's a great song.
I love it every time. It just puts me in a good mood.
I like that. All right. Final question, and then I just want you to be able to tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can look up Protector Brewery, and where they can come visit you if they're ever in San Diego. But here it is, man. What are your parting words for our listeners today? If there's something that you can leave them with, what would you tell them?
I'd say that listen to yourself, listen to your gut instincts, listen to your heart. And if you want to do something, you can do that in addition to what you're doing today. And you got to start somewhere, be okay with that. And over time, you'll start to see that the ideal world that you want will be built by being better and mastering the basics every single day. And also be caring to yourself, be compassionate, don't get frustrated if things don't go your way one day. It's kind of like the stock market, right? It just goes, but it keeps on going up and to the right. So, right. But it's not going to happen unless you do it. And I'd say just start, and, everybody intuitively knows what that is.
That's awesome, man. All right. Where can we find Sean Haggerty, and where can we find Protector Brewery? Yeah.
So if you guys go to protectorbrewery.com, you can check out our Instagram. It's Protector Brewery, Facebook. But more importantly, if you look at our website, you'll see our core beers, and then also the states that we distribute to, the major retail chains, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Costco, Natural Grocers, HEB, etc. We're going to get nationwide distribution to about 44, 45 states going by the end of November this year. Wow. So if you need a little bit of a maybe some Black Friday deals, something for the holidays, we'll have a little bit of beer, and it'll be at a really good price. If you guys want to support, and if you just want to come in, have a beer, connect with some really good people. I mean, I'm just one piece of this pie. Sure, founder, president, brewer here, but the team that we have here is excellent. My wife is tied to the company in every way, shape, and form. She's a massive support system. By the way, I'd highly recommend it. If you go into something, do it together. It's going to bond you in ways that you never saw. But yeah, we're located in San Diego. You can see our address, 8680 Miralani Drive, and we're open Wednesday through Saturday if you just want to get drunk at the bar.
Well, listen, man, I've been there. It's an awesome place. I look forward to getting back and seeing you, Corey, and Shawnee. And hey, man, it's been a pleasure to see you again. All the advice and wisdom that you give me and our listeners this time around has been fantastic. And I hope to have you back on the show sometime soon, man. Thanks so much. Today is up to you. Take inspired action, and don't count the days, make the days count.